Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. And welcome to Talking with Teachers. I'm your host, Dr. Abdullah bin Hamid Ali. And today we have another special guest. He is our Imam Dawud Walid, also known as Dawud Walid. And before I bring him on, I wanted to read a brief bio of him. Of course, nothing, will sort of like properly summarize all of his work, but Imam Dawud Walid is currently the executive director of the Michigan chapter of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, otherwise known as CAIR, and a member of the Imams Council of Michigan. He previously served as an Imam of Masjid Wali Muhammad in Detroit and the Bosnian American Islamic Center in Hamtramck, Michigan. He is the author of the books Futuwa and Raising Males into Sacred Manhood, Blackness and Islam, and Towards Sacred Activism. He was a 2011-2012 fellow of the University of Southern California, American Muslim Civil Leadership Institute, a 2014 to 2015 fellow of the Wayne State Law School Detroit Action Equity Lab, a 2021 to 2022 Racial Justice and Religion Task Force Fellow at Aspen Institute, and a 2017 to 2023 Senior Fellow at Auburn Seminary based in New York. Now, of course, Imam Dawud is, of course, I've collaborated with him on multiple projects, and I consider him a very good friend. So we like to welcome our brother, our Imam, our teacher, Imam Dawud. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to Talking with Teachers.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh wa maghfiratuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm fantastic. It was wonderful being on here with you, Sidi.
Alhamdulillah. I really appreciate you agreeing to come on and offer some guidance and wisdom for the audience. The first question I'd like to ask you is one that I present to each one of my guests, and it is a basic question of who is Imam Dawud? Who is Imam Dawud Walid? You prefer Dawud Walid or Dawud Walid? I know we all call you Dawud Walid.
Yeah. It's technically, name's Walid, but Walid is fine. As you know, linguistically the same.
Well, keep it, the pseudonym, so that people know you publicly as Imam Dawud Walid, so we'll call it that now. So Imam Dawud. So who is Imam Dawud Walid? Who's Dawud Walid? And fundamentally, what that question is about is, your family history, background, your journey, right, to Islam and into the study of Islam, So what does that look like?
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق الناصر بالحق بالحق وهدي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره العظيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. First, your needy brother. I was born in the city of Detroit, and I come from, basically, we could say, as an interfaith family. Everyone on my mother's side of the family is Christian. I have some Muslims on my father's side of the family. My uncle who became Sunni, but my father in high school, he went to Central High School, which is off of, it's across from Linwood and Burlingame. And for anyone who knows about that in Detroit, is directly across the street from Temple Number 1, right? So my father literally was there, and he used to go across the street, and he started listening to the teachings, and got off of pork, was introduced to bean pie, right, in the early 1960s, in the time of when Malcolm was still in the nation before he came over to the Sunnah. So, as I said, I was born in Detroit, but my parents came from radically different backgrounds. They met at university at Virginia State College, which is now Virginia State University in Petersburg, Virginia. My father was a sophomore. She was a freshman. They married directly after my mother got her bachelor's degree. My father had graduated the year before. Then they moved to Detroit, and I was born. Subsequently, my parents divorced, and we went to New York first, and then back down to Virginia, because all of my mother's family is in Virginia, and I was raised as a Christian, right? So the extent of my Islam was, number one, I never ate pork, and I knew assalamu alaikum, walaikum salam. But beyond that, I had no real Islamic understanding. I was sent to Sunday school, participated in the youth choir for a while, and really I balked at going to church anymore around the age of 14, and I didn't feel comfortable. I don't think I really ever accepted that God could be a man, like anthropomorphism, much less the white Jesus. Like my great grandmother, she had the Southern Black Trinity on her wall going in her house, and then back in those days, in the 80s, for people her age, the Southern Black Trinity was, you had on the wall a picture of the white Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes. To the right side, there's a picture of John F. Kennedy, and to the left, the picture of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That was the Southern Black Trinity, right? So I used to see that. I could never accept that picture as being God. So I stopped. I refused to go to church when I was about 14. And this was around the time of conscious hip hop music. And there started to be like not only pro-black motifs, but Islamic motifs. And it was really rap music of the late 80s. Rap groups like Public Enemy, Boogie Down Productions. I remember a video vividly by a rap group that kept showing Malcolm X in the videos called My Philosophy, Boogie Down Productions. This is what inspired me to then start reading and listening to Malcolm. And so I had the vinyl. I got hold of the vinyl copy of the Ballad of the Ballad of the Bullet was on one side, and then his talk message to the grassroots. That led me to then reading all biography of Malcolm X, and then led me to declaring Islam. So on my own terms. So really, there was no like du'at that came to me. I never had the white cassette tapes of Imam Siraj Wahaj. Or Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed until later, or Imam Jamil El-Amin, because they have those cassette tapes. Some of the young people probably never even seen a cassette tape.
Right.
Dawah cassette tapes. I didn't get a hold of Dawah cassette tapes. I never had Muslims invite me to the masjid, even though I had in my high school, there was one Palestinian family, one Kuwaiti family, and it was an African-American Muslim family. They never invited me to Islam. And I went on my own and took my shahada as a youth. So that's kind of my story of leaving. We could say a quasi-Muslim background in a sense, but being raised as a Baptist and then coming to proper Islam or my becoming Sunni, Ahlul Sunnah. So that's kind of like my my journey.
Oh, inshallah. Yeah. So how old were you when you converted to Islam?
19 years old.
Oh, 19. Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your parents were very young when they were married. You said that, she was your father's sophomore, she's a freshman, and then it seemed like later on they get married during high school or after?
No, it's right after university.
University. Okay, I'm sorry. See, I'm thinking, you're talking about university. Okay.
Yeah. So even back then, it was very normal for Black Americans, and perhaps this is lost on people now because people think that people marrying at age 21 and 22, that's too young. But actually, that was very traditional for African Americans in the early 70s. That wasn't anything that was bizarre or strange, in our culture. Now people delay marriage too long or even don't get married, right? But it was, and sometimes people would even get married in college before they even finish getting their degrees, but they were engaged while they were in university.
Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, you're bringing back so many memories for me. You're talking about, Boogie Down Productions and the rap, hip-hop, breakdance days, and I had my time. I was part of a breakdance group, part of a rap group as well. And, we actually recorded, things in the studio. So yeah, it's just really, inshallah, refreshing to, have those old memories sort of, summoned anew, but it definitely was a very, important time. I think that the youth today that they really missed, a lot of valuable things, right? Especially considering, the nature of rap music, hip hop music right now, right? They didn't, I actually, share some of the old songs with my kids from time to time. Of course, I know there's some people here that, oh my God, astaghfirullah, he's making his kids listen to music, right? But I want them to be aware of, there's history involved there, right? There's a history, and to understand too the content, the different types of content that was being promoted back during that time, But okay, so you become Muslim at 19. When did you start the serious study of Islam?
Okay, so I graduated high school a year early, and then I used to play football. So in middle school, high school, and I was recruited by some schools. I didn't want to go off into a rural area and wanted to stay close to home. And I ended up playing, and I was redshirted my freshman year at the Virginia Union University, which is HBCU, Historical Black College University, which was perhaps it was a mistake, to have stayed probably close to home and going to school. But anyway, I ended up getting put on academic probation. I wasn't taking my studies seriously, right? Then I ended up working for a while, right? For a little while, right? Then I ended up joining the U.S. Navy, right? So I ended up serving in the U.S. Navy. While I was in the U.S. Navy and I was deployed and I went overseas, we pulled into the port of Jebel Ali. Now, keep in mind, I was a Muslim in the U.S. Navy, which my father thought I was crazy because my father was a conscious objector and he refused to go to the Vietnam War. As a matter of fact, my father told the draft board the same thing Muhammad Ali, rahmatullahi, told the draft board, said, ain't nobody in Viet Cong call me no ninja, right? And my father was like, if you give me a gun, I'm going to shoot white folks. Now, obviously, he didn't mean it. But they declared him. They declared my father to be
unfit.
Mentally unfit, which the irony of it is he ended up later on getting his PhD in psychology. But he was disqualified from getting a federal job. So anyway, I went to UAE. We pulled into Jebel Ali, supporting the UAE. And of course, I saw Abu Dhabi and all of that. And this is where I first decided that I wanted to study the Arabic language and get a proper teacher. And also, one of the important reasons for me, like I never had any aspirations to ever go on the minbar, to ever teach. I wanted to understand God's word for myself because I knew, like as a teenager, one thing I want to make clear also, even though rap music was a conduit, I didn't embrace Islam because of Black nationalism or seeing it like a cultural thing. I had some serious questions about Christian theology. And one of those things was the preservation. Like I knew that the oldest manuscript of the Bible was in Greek. And I know that Isa alayhi salam did not speak Greek, right? He spoke Aramaic. I knew that. So I knew that I wasn't reading like God's word untampered in its proper language, right? So I want to learn Arabic specifically so I would not be deprived, as Christians are being deprived, of like reading a Bible that's not really the words of Isa, not even in the language of the revelation that was given to Isa, right? So this is one thing. So once I got out and I came back from overseas, I came to Detroit. At that time, first of all, I had family in Detroit because I was born here, so I had family here. But at that time, it was, at least in my understanding, Detroit was the best place to come in America to learn Arabic and to read texts. And I knew that, like, Imam Suhaib Webb was here actually studying in Detroit before he actually went to Azhar. Like, he learned Arabic here. And there was something called the American-Islamic University that had been established with some Azhari scholars. It's now defunct now. So anyway, I came here. I ended up getting a teacher in Arabic, starting off Imam Salim Abdul Rahman, rahmatullah alayhi, and started studying grammar and Tuhfatul Saniya, which is the introduction into Ajrumiya, and started reading some of these texts. Ustad Nadar Muhsin, and I read Kitab Arisala by Imam Shafi'i, Radullah, and started reading these texts. And then I was fortunate later on to go to Mali, and I was over there 2 different times where I had the chance to sit with some of the Mashayikh, Sheikh Mamadou Jallo. I know it's really Mahmoud, but you know, in the Fulani people, they say Mamadou Jallo, they say Mamadou in West Africa. And this is when I was introduced to the Maliki Madhab, actually going to Mali. But my introduction into actually being in the community actually was through the Jama'ah, or the community of Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed, rahmatullahi alayhi. And I think we'll get into that a little bit later about Imam Muhammad. But I thank Allah that my introduction into the community and learning was through that community and not through another route here in the city of Detroit. You know, and I won't elaborate on those reasons why, but there's a lot of different things going on in Detroit at the 90s, and with some groups that are controversial and even some that I would consider to be deviants. So alhamdulillah, I was able to get my foothold in there. And then since then, after, you know, I've made trips abroad to sit with the mashayikh, and even here, I've been blessed that, you know, to actually be able to sit at the feet of a scholar. I've read many mutun, one-on-one teaching through the tutelage of Sheikh Ali Suleiman Ali, who is a immigrant from Ghana. His family actually is from Kano, from Nigeria. He's from the Hausa tribe. So I've read several books with him as well on, you know, Usul al-Fiqh, Ulum al-Tafsir, Quran, also things on Balagha, and also Fiqh Muqarin, or comparative fiqh. That we've read a number of books and texts, and I'm still like a lifelong student. He's also, I would consider, my murabbi. So I'm just fortunate that I have someone who gives me 2 days a week. I sit at his feet to this day. I sat with him basically for 12 straight years, studying reading various texts and getting what we know to be, it's called ijaza, a number of texts, besides sitting with some other teachers. And I've had the opportunity to read some texts with some other teachers here in America, such as Sheikh Suhail Lahar, getting ijaza through the Sanad of Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya Ninawi, and hadith texts. So yeah, I believe in the traditional way of sitting with the teacher and reading the book and getting some sort of permission before I just run off at the mouth. So
yeah, well, that's actually one of the things I've always appreciated about you, is your humility when it comes to this. You know, your respect for the ulama, and you know, and even I mean, if someone, you know, was able to point out something to you and say, okay, you're wrong about this. You know, you've never really been one of those type of people that I've never known you to be one of those type of people who say, you know, you resist, your ego gets in the way and says, oh, you know what, I'm going to continue to defend my wrong position, right, despite everything. So mashallah, it's pretty amazing. I really do appreciate you going through all that. So of course you eventually become an imam, right? So after all this, you know, this continuous training, a lot of private study. Now I actually want to come back to one point before I even go there. So in the Navy, you were in the Navy about like 4 years. How long were you there? Okay,
4 years.
All right, correct. Yes, Allah. And
you know, it wasn't easy being a Muslim in the Navy at that time, because when I went over to the so-called Middle East, but this was during the time of when America was enforcing the no-fly zone against Iraq. There was when
Right.
Saddam Hussein was there. So I'm not sure, you probably remember, but this is a time when the Clinton administration and Madeleine Albright basically she justified the killing or the death of about, I think it's like 250,000 like Iraqi children died because of the sanctions or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt I have a lot of remorse. I made tawbah for being in the U.S. Navy, and when I have Muslims that come to me and they ask me about, they heard that I was in the military. Should I join the military as a Muslim? And I actually don't. I don't encourage. I don't.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It makes sense. And I've come across that before. I remember there's a brother who spent some time in Iraq as well, and he came to me. He was very remorseful about his time there. He wasn't Muslim at the time, but he converted to Islam later on. And he really felt really bad about the fact that he did kill people when he was there. So he was really searching for some redemption for the time he spent there. And it's I was thinking back to the Vietnam War as well. You make mention of your father, who actually, like Muhammad Ali, and he pretty much, say, I'm not going to support or allow myself to be drafted into this war. I recently interviewed Dr. Abdullah Quick as well, and so he talked about he has similar experience, and around the same time as Muhammad Ali, his stand against the Vietnam War, where of course it led him to flee to Canada as a result of that, right? And so it's just these things are extremely important. Like they seem small, right? But I think that for the younger generations to understand the type of challenges that our predecessors had and their elders had, anything that they really demanded a lot of courage, right? A lot of courage, and a lot of what you call sort of, futua, or sort of, proper manhood, right? That has been lost, unfortunately, with a continuing, hyper emasculated culture that we see ourselves living in right now. But yeah. So okay. So you're learning your journey. Then eventually, how do you become an imam? Well, how did that happen?
I never an aspiration, right? I had one of my teachers first told me to start doing some basic classes on talking about hadith and seerah, and then also I was basically given permission to teach these things, and I still, and by the way, to this day, I still don't. People give me this title, imam, or some people call me sheikh. Literally, when people ask me, matter of fact, when I was in Cairo, I was with early this year, and I was meeting with Sheikh Ahmed Al-Azhari, and I was introduced to Habib Ali Al-Jafri, and he was calling me sheikh, and I just told him, "Ana talib al-ilm." I'm just a student of knowledge. I don't really like the title, but I was kind of pushed forward, to teach and then to lead, and then this person, as well as Sheikh Ali Suleiman, recognized me, said, "No, you're qualified, to lead a congregation," and so it was basically through not myself giving myself a title, but from three of my elders basically said, "Okay, you have a permission to do this," but it was never anything that I
you didn't pursue it. It was something like it came to you. Someone invited you.
Yeah, it came to, I was invited, and it came to me. And then, also during the time of when Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed, rahmatullahi, because I was with that Jama'ah, they began to send young African Americans over to Jami Abi Noor, or Abu Noor University in Damascus. And I was made the chairman of religious liaison studies. So for the American Society of Muslims National Young Adult Association. So the original chairman was Imam Safir Rab, who was in Baltimore, the brother of Dr. Intisar, who teaches at Harvard. Then Imam Makram El-Amin became the chair of that organization after Imam Safir was in Damascus. So I was put in charge, basically through this organization, Imam Muhammad, to bring the basic curricula, the basic things of what were being taught to the students over in Damascus, to bring that basic foundation, to then disseminate it to younger people in his community here in the United States of America, but of course, translating things and having things into the English language. So I had direct connection and was involved in that. So that's kind of like my bridge to the Talab al-Ilm, the students of knowledge. But this was through Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed's association. So I was doing that for at least 2, if not 3 years. I was doing that. So then at this time, then I was recognized as Imam Dawud at this time, right? So this is in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I personally, I think the title Imam is even much more dignified than even Sheikh, personally. I mean, because I being an Imam, especially, of course, if you take your job seriously, and I do think you do take your job seriously. Well, you're not the Imam anymore in the masjid, but, you're dealing with the public, right? And that's a really challenging thing to do, is you're dealing with different types of people, different temperaments, different ideologies, and you have to try to find a way to balance all of that. And, so it can be very stressful. And it's more like a 24-hour job. People coming to you with their marital problems, their personal family problems, and that can be very difficult, right? You have to imagine people die, you sort of oversee their janazas. I mean, the sheikh, we can, if you're not the imam, sheikh minus imam, and we sit down, read our books, we write our books, and I mean, we pay our dues. I mean, many of us. I was imam, at least in the prison. That's as close as I've ever really been to being imam, and I've actually been assistant to the imam, Sheikh Mohammed, and Philadelphia for some time as well, both him and Imam Anas Mohammed, some years ago, right? So I definitely know it kind of goes along with it, and it can be very, very difficult, right? Very frustrating at times, but you have to sort of maintain a certain type of public persona, right? To sort of send the message to the community that, things will work out, right? They give people hope and those type of things. So, it's really interesting. It's really interesting dynamic that we live in. I mean, all of us are tulab al-ilm. We're all students of knowledge, and and of course, the moment we start to claim that we're more than that, then or the moment we start to think, I guess you say, that we have arrived, right? At the point where we no longer need any type of tutelage or any type of guidance or instruction from anyone. I think that's a big problem. That's a danger zone. And Shaitan is going to take total advantage of that. So
actually, Umar ibn Khattab, Sayyidina Umar has a nice saying about this. من قال أنا عالم فهو جاهل. Whoever says about themselves, I'm a scholar, they're actually an ignoramus.
Right, that's right.
Sayyidina Umar.
Right, exactly, right. So, but what you also do, you're also the executive director of CAIR, right? So when did that begin, and how has it been going all these years?
So I jokingly say I'm the Obama of CAIR. In the sense that I was the first hired and elected executive director of any CAIR chapter, and that was here in Michigan. So that goes all the way back to 2005. So I've been doing this for quite a while. I was hired because I was already known by the board of directors. I was already known here in the community, one, because of being at Masjid Wali Muhammad, and also writing weekly articles for the Muslim Observer, which is a newspaper based here, is ran by an Indian, a group of Indian immigrants who are Muslims. So I was already known in the community, as far as doing things not just in the African-American community, but going to MSAs and speaking and giving khutbah in the suburban communities. I had been in the media and done TV interviews even before being with CAIR Michigan, though I have no formal education in law. In law. Actually, when I went back to university, by the way, when I got back to Detroit, I ended up getting a degree in education. So my secular education is actually a degree in elementary education. So I was hired in 2005. How that's been, it's been challenging, and I've seen different things change in the community in regards to the work. It used to be when I first started the job that many people who are in activism spaces were really seen more committed to basic religiosity and the principles of the deen. So even if some people they identify with this particular group or this particular group or this particular group, at least the baseline was a reverence and respect to say, yeah, we try to follow Quran and Sunnah, even though they may differ understands between a Salafi and a Tijani or someone Jamaatul Tabligh or someone in another Jama'ah. At least it was, this was authoritative. And what I've seen in my work in dealing with younger people, from having interns in the office to dealing with other activists in other organizations or in other states, is that I joke around and say that it was the good old days when we used to just debate about this.
Right.
Debate about these, like, with the Salafi debates and things like that, or like I would have someone talk to me about not using these, or I had to roll up my pants legs. Those were the good old days. Because now the debates, many times, the discussions is basically if not an outright denial, at least a practical denial of actually the sources of the deen, right? And so being an activism space is now is much harder than it used to be. And this really started, in my estimation, during the time of the Obama administration. It didn't used to be this way earlier in activism spaces. And around the time of the Obama administration, this thing about this intersectionality sort of discourse that came up, aligning with who I call Kamal Huruf, aligning with the Hurufi agenda, the people of the alphabets, really did something to with the work. And even what we label as anti-Muslim bigotry, or I don't like the term Islamophobia too much, but
same here.
We label as it, like, I don't really care if someone likes me as a Muslim, right? I want to be able to practice my deen and live a dignified existence where I'm not being discriminated against. That, I want to have myself in the community be able to have the same rights and opportunities. We're not guaranteed the same outcomes, but the same access, right? That's what I'm concerned about, right? But I don't need 46 in the White House to like me or invite me to an iftar, or 45 before, or 44, and some of these things that we tend to call Islamophobia. And then we need healing circles for resilience when people don't like us. Like, I think it's really like ajib. I think it's bizarre.
Yeah. I think that, of course, that's reflected as well, like in your writings, a lot of your speeches. You've written about sacred activism. You've written about matters of blackness and race, and then your most recent book, Futuwa, with respect to sort of traditional manhood, or proper manhood, and it seems that the works that you've done, it really garners a lot of attention. I've been seeing a lot of your posts, your invites, to different parts of the world, to go and teach on these topics. And it's really nice to see that, at least we have still looks like a significant percentage of the Muslims who have interest in these things and have an interest in traditional Islam and traditional manhood, and trying to overcome a lot of these more problematic issues, which you have to yourself try to manage naturally, because you're going to interact with a lot of different people from different levels. You have to sort of serve as a sort of like a diplomat, I guess you would say. You have to talk to people sometimes, who you perhaps don't even like, right? You have to deal with them, and you have to try to find common ground with them, and at least encourage it, so, at least that's my perception of things. And you mentioned, of course, Hamtramck, Michigan, so which is also where Imam W.D. Mohammed was born, right? Which is interestingly, with especially Hamtramck has made the news recently with matters related to the American flag and the LGBT flag, and also I think there's another article that came out that spoke about how Muslims there have decided. I don't know how many Muslims there, but have decided that they are not going to support the Democrat Party in future elections, at least for the time being. So many people know who Imam W.D. Mohammed is, but for those who don't, how would you introduce Imam Muhammad, and why would you consider him to be extremely significant and a person that people should continue to study?
So Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed rahmatullahi alayhi was born in Hamtramck, Michigan, as you mentioned, in 1933. And actually he was born on a street called Yemen Street. So he was born in Yemen Street. His father was the successor of the Nation of Islam that was started in Detroit in 1930 by a guy of South Asian background who is still some of a mystery. He has so many different pseudonyms. W.F. Fard, W.D. Farad Muhammad, Muhammad Abdullah is different names. With the Proto-Islamic movement, I'll use Dr. Sherman Abdul King Jackson's language. He started the Proto-Islamic movement, Nation of Islam, and his father, who was Elijah Poole, who then became Elijah Kareem, who then became Elijah Muhammad, was his father. And what Imam Muhammad is most known for is that he inherited the Nation of Islam in 1975, in February, after his father passed. He had been kicked out of the Nation of Islam twice for questioning its theology, and particularly the issue of tajseem, or anthropomorphism, that the Nation of Islam put forward about God being a man, that black men are gods. He said he never accepted that in his heart, and on a couple of occasions he got put out. And actually, and Malcolm X wrote about this in his autobiography, that he mentioned Wallace was the most spiritual of all of Elijah Muhammad's children, and Wallace would speak to him about like traditional Islamic subjects and traditional Islam. So this is known. In 1975, he took over the Nation of Islam, and within that year, it is said that he led the largest conversion of Islam in American history, where there's about 300,000 African Americans who left the belief that God is a man, who left the belief that black man is God, who left the belief that all white people are intrinsically devils, that left the belief that there is no qiyamah, that there's no resurrection. He guided them to the traditional aqidah of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Right, so this is a big karama, right, of Imam Warith. And what I would say about him, and he had a lot of influence on me, but I think there's three things I want to mention about him that maybe will clear some misconceptions. And many people, even his community, don't know some of these things. One, either because they didn't have access, or two, they weren't paying attention. So I'll mention two things. The first thing is a thing of access. How did he get the name Warith-Deen Mohammed? Because he was born Wallace D. Mohammed. He later became Warith-Deen Mohammed. He legally changed it to Warith-Deen Mohammed, which literally means the inheritor of the deen, or the inheritor of the religion. Well, I heard this on the authority of Imam Dawud Alim, rahimullah ta'ala. Dawud Alim was one of the imams here in Detroit. He was with Imam Muhammad firstly in the nation when Imam Muhammad was a minister at the temple in Philadelphia. And after Imam Muhammad left, that's when the notorious Black Mafia started in the Philadelphia temple. So they were friends going back to a very young age. So when Imam Muhammad came to proper Islam, he made a visit to Saudi Arabia and met with the ulama, and he met with the Muslim World League. And he met with, at this gathering, Mufti bin Baz. Mufti bin Baz, of course, was the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, and he was the rector of Al Medina University. And so he met with bin Baz. So bin Baz was very impressed by Imam Muhammad and marveled about, the change of those people leaving the nation, coming out of the nation. So it was bin Baz who recommended to him and said, you are not Walid-Deen, you are Warith-Deen, because you inherited this from your father, Elijah Muhammad. So it was through the suggestion of bin Baz that that Walid-Deen Mohammed became Warith-Deen. This is one thing. The second thing is when he became, and there's this thing that, people thought that Imam Muhammad was freestyling and he was never in contact with any sort of traditional scholars or even learned from any. This also is not true. Besides his youth, learning Arabic and learning poetry and some of the hadith and Quran from a teacher. But when he changed it from the Nation of Islam to the worldwide community of Al-Islam in the West. When he first changed the name out of the nation, he bought a book called Prayer and Al-Islam. And some of the OGs still have this book. This is the first prayer manual and book in which taught people how to make proper salah. Well, at the very beginning of that book, it says that the information in it was verified and approved by Sheikh Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn Siddiq al-Ghumari. So whether people know it or not, the actual original way that the people in the community were actually saying prayer was according to the fit or the understanding of Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari, who of course was the Sheikh of Mufti Ali Jummah. And I believe Sheikh Hamza Yusuf actually has sent it back to Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari, who was a great hadith scholar in Morocco, in Tanja, or people call it Tangier. Right. This is the second point. Also was Shadali in Tasawwuf. The third thing is that his relationship with Mufti Ahmad Kutaro, that Imam Ahmed Deeb, his father, Sheikh Abdullah Deeb, may Allah preserve them both. And I knew this from what I was told, but Sheikh Abdullah Deeb was an eyewitness in Damascus when Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed gave bay'ah to Mufti Ahmad Kutaro and took the Naqshbandi Tariqa. So he is Al-Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed and Naqshbandi. And that's what he was on. Now, he didn't talk about certain things to the majority of his people. Why? Because he felt like they wouldn't understand where he was, what he was doing, and what he was taking. But he even mentioned about calling him his sheikh in a Muslim journal, article, and they wrote about him coming back from Syria. But Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed actually had a sheikh, a Sufi sheikh. He had a murshid he gave bay'ah to, and there's a video even online on YouTube where anyone could look it up. Where he's sitting with Mufti Kutaro, and he said that he wished he could leave him, and he wanted to serve him, do khidmah, so that he could sit there and rub and massage his leg and massage his feet and do khidmah for him. And he kissed him. He kissed the sheikh on his head and on his hand. Then the sheikh kissed his hands back. Then he kissed his hands, which we know this is like the adab of what people do with the ulama, with their shuyukh. Many people in Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed's community don't know this, so they'd be freaked out. They think it's some sort of ghulu or exaggeration to kiss the hand of your sheikh. Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed's around there kissing the hand of his sheikh, who's Kurdish. He wasn't a black man. He kissed his head and said he would do khidmah for him and rub his feet. So this is the Imam Muhammad that many people don't know, and even many people who claim to follow him and be a part of his community either don't know this or don't follow him in that.
Right, yeah. That's subhanAllah. That's very unique and impressive information, right, to know. I mean, it's I actually met him, rahimahullah, in 2007. I mean, actually right after I moved here to California in 2007, and there was an event in San Francisco being put together by I think one of the organizers was Imam Abu Qadir Amin from San Francisco. So I was there. I was invited to be a speaker. Imam Sulaiman Abdul Hamid was there too. He came into town. Dr. Hatem Bazian was on stage, and so when Imam Muhammad finally came, when he finally entered the place, the thing was interesting is that one thing I noticed about him was that, considering the amount of influence he had, national influence, that he had on the African American community, the former members of the Nation of Islam, that one would think that he would be living large, like Louis Farrakhan or someone else similar to that, alligator sneakers and, whatever type of suits that Farrakhan wears, tailor-made suits. But when I looked him up and down, as I sat on the stage, he was at the podium speaking, it was just so glaring, so noticeable. It's like, I'm looking at his suit. I said, you know what? That suit probably cost him about $50. And I'm looking at his shoes. He's wearing sneakers, right? And his sneakers were they were old sneakers, And I was like, man, how can a man like this live so frugally, right? I mean, why isn't he just enjoying, his access to wealth and the privilege, right? The way that most leaders would, right? Now, of course, I'm saying that not to try to make it seem as if he was a saint, right? Because, of course, naturally there are things, that one can criticize him for, certain opinions that he did have, that, and of course, we don't want to speak ill of the dead, right? But, we do know there was some controversy regarding his position on the Iraq war and opinions about the issue of hijab and those type of things, right? But at the same time, I do think reasonable people would understand that, when you look at his experience, you look at his history, you look at his teachers even, right? And the type of ideas that he was influenced by, that you can understand why he may have gone in those directions, right? And we can focus and magnify just a couple of flaws or a couple of errors, right? Or we can look at the greater good that was done, by this man, rahimahullah, by showing bravery and courage against his father, in the face of, threats of death. And, he was going to go to prison too for not going to Vietnam, right? And
he did go to prison.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. He did go to prison, because of that, his refusal, right, to go. Right. And, but then to now come out and criticize his father and, say he's not a messenger and those stuff. And I remember, I'm sorry to sort of go on for so long, but there's things that is coming back to me at the moment. But I remember this one conversation I had with my father, rahimahullah, who actually was a member of the first resurrection. So, and he really, really believed in Elijah. And I remember him talking about when the transition happened, when Imam Dawud Walid Mohammed had taken over. And he was very critical of his father, right, at first. And my father was really bothered by that, And I remember he said to me, he said, that's one thing I could never wrap my head around, was that he was too critical of his father. He was constantly criticizing his father. And he said to me, my father said to me, he said, now, I just didn't understand that. Didn't he know that we would follow him anyway? He didn't have to criticize his father, right? So it's just really interesting just to show, again, that there was a distaste in the mouths that a lot of people had for his criticism of his father, but he was very courageous at the same time. And doing that, at least during those early years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he blessed him, and have mercy on them. And, continue. I mean, if something else you'd like to add.
No, I mean, I really think that's it. I mean, as far as Imam Warith-Deen Mohammed's Jama'ah, and I was one of the imams of Masjid Muhammad, and I left, and I then went to the Bosnian American Islamic Center for a period of time, which is a wonderful experience. To my knowledge, I'm the only non-Balkan to ever serve as an imam over a Bosnian Jama'ah in the United States of America. So that was a nice experience. But as far as Imam Muhammad's community, I still have connections with two of the Islamic centers that came from there, and I do have some connections. Good friends with Imam Suleiman Hamid, down in Atlanta, Georgia, and some of the other brothers in different areas. But really, I stopped affiliating with that Jama'ah around 2000. He passed in 2008, around 2008, 2009, and that was simply because of the amount of tomfoolery and shenanigans that was taking place between the issues of family and lawsuits and different things that are being made, and then issues of money and like smears and slander that was going on, where people were smearing and slandering each other, and it became to be overly toxic, number one. And number two, Imam Muhammad never wanted to have a khalifa or to have a successor that he was passing the baton to, because he wanted his followers to learn this deen and to be integrated with the broader American Muslim community. And he said this, and I heard him say it, right? Yeah. He wasn't looking for someone to be like he wasn't going to do like Abu Bakr Siddiq and like appointing Omar, right? Yeah. That was never his intention, But there were people who were battling and saying that they were the true person to represent his leadership, and then this one really isn't his real wife, or all this old type of foolishness and lawsuits. So I just had to leave, because it was spiritually unhealthy for me to be, especially when you see two part like normally, like you have an issue of a couple of parties of the believers who are at odds, and at least you could see that the haqq is with one and the other. Like, for instance, with Sayyidina Ali, right, and the Khawarij weren't on the haqq and Sayyidina Ali is on the haqq. Like, it's clear, right? But in this particular situation, you had two sides, and both sides are in the wrong.
Yeah.
So I had to leave that community, but I still have a lot of love and respect for Imam Muhammad and those people who still have like a lot of affinity and allegiance to that community and to that history, and I have a lot of affinity towards that history. But that's when I had to separate myself from really being connected to that Jama'ah.
Alhamdulillah. Imam Dawud, where can people follow your work?
So I got off of social media about 3 years ago. So there's a way people can follow me on Telegram. I do have a Telegram account I started maybe 6 months ago. But, I think that's really the only way that people, if people are in Michigan, they can go to CAIR Michigan's Facebook page, because the different activities that we do here in Michigan are on there. But really, besides that, it'd really be my Telegram page. So if someone just goes to Telegram, look my name up, they could find me on there.
Yeah, well, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. Really do appreciate it. You taking out your time, my good brother, my brother Imam, my friend. And hopefully this won't be the last time we have this opportunity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you and benefit by you and through you, and eternalize that benefit, inshallah. So until next time, barakallahu feek, wa sallallahu sayyidina Muhammad alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube and Spotify. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode, God willing. Peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.